Hi again, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about the powers of the presidency. And a lot of this is going to seem like pretty basic stuff. A lot of us feel like we know what the president does. But today we need to kind of take a deep dive into the formal powers that the president has that are given to the president by the Constitution and the informal powers that have kind of been made up over time. So without further delay, let's go. So first of all, let's start with this. Who can be president? Well, first you got to be 35 years old. You have to have spent 14 years in residence in the country. So you can't move to France, be an American citizen, and then decide a year before election after 10 years overseas, I'm coming back to America. You have to have had continuous residence in the United States. You have to be what's called a natural born citizen. Over the years, there's been a lot of disagreement over what this means. I think back to the 2008 campaign. In 2008, you had Barack Obama, who was born in Hawaii, whose mother was an American citizen, whose father was a Kenyan citizen, but was born in Hawaii. Barack Obama was an American citizen in two different ways. Number one, born in Hawaii. Number two, mom was a citizen. He's a natural born citizen. No doubt about it. But there were conspiracy theorists who said, well, both of your parents have to be American. Not true. Well, he might have been born in Nigeria. Who cares? He wasn't. He was born in Hawaii. And even if he had been born in Kenya, his mother was an American citizen. Therefore, he is an American citizen. In that same election, people said the same thing about Obama's running mate. Well, John McCain was born in the Panama Canal Zone, which was not part of America, so he's not a natural born citizen. Nonsense. That's stupid. His parents were American citizens. He's an American citizen. This is what it means to be a natural born citizen. You got a parent or you're born on American soil. Either of those things are true, you're a natural born citizen. So what exactly is the president's job? So the number one job of the president as the executive is to execute the laws faithfully, to carry out the laws passed by Congress, whether you like them or not. The president is required to carry out the laws whether he or she likes them or not. The president's job is also to represent the country and be head of state. Now, these first two roles are the things that make us different from a country like Great Britain. In Great Britain, the person responsible for carrying out the laws passed by Parliament is the Prime Minister. But the person who represents the country in other places is the Queen. The royal family is the head of state. So it's different in the United States than it is in many parliamentary democracies where they have a figurehead who is the head of state and an actual person who gets things done who is the executive power. The United States is a little different from most countries in that both of those are the same person. The other thing that makes the United States a little different is that the president is formally the commander-in-chief, constitutional words, of all American military forces. So the president has the final word on anything that happens in the military. In some other countries, there is a minister of defense who has final word. There is an independent military, but in the United States, the president is the commander-in-chief of the military. These are not the only jobs, though. Some of the jobs that are not specifically stated in the Constitution are jobs like this. Every president comes into office with a set of things that he or she wants to get done, and we call that an agenda. The agenda is the set of policies that a politician hopes to implement. And the president is going to come in, no matter who's in Congress, and try to get their agenda, whether it's their people in Congress or not their people in Congress. The president leads their political party, and we've seen many times in American history where a president kind of reshapes their political party because of the force of their personality, which I think is something that would be very fair to say about President Trump, who has very much changed how the Republican Party operates, has changed some of their underlying beliefs by leading the party as president. The president is in charge of leading the government. All government agencies eventually report to the president of the United States, and that is a critical job of an American president. And then finally, leading the nation. Most presidents have taken very seriously the notion that you're not the president of the people who voted for you. You're the president of the United States of America. You don't just do things that are good for your voters. You do things that are good for the country because you lead the nation. And that's a pretty heavy responsibility. President has other powers. President has the power to veto. A veto is a president's formal no to a law from Congress. With a 2/3 vote, Congress can override the president's no and make him or her do the thing anyways. But the veto message is normally a final no. Now, there's also a kind called a pocket veto, where if the president refuses to sign something and Congress adjourns within 10 days, it's vetoed without a veto. So the president doesn't have to look like the bad guy putting the bill down. He can say, oh, well, I just didn't get around to signing it, which is kind of a cop-out. Joining us to explain all of this is Dr. Adams. Dr. Adams, it's great to have you with us again. Do you have some wisdom you'd like to share with us about the presidential veto?
Yes, Mr. Boyle. I think you understand when the president vetoes a bill, it's dead. It's quick. It's painless. When the president sends his veto message to Congress, it's a quick stab through the heart of a bill.
Well, pardon me, Dr. Adams, but they really aren't dead until Congress fails to attempt to override the veto, right?
Oh no, Mr. Boyle. Those bills are still quite dead. I like to think of the veto override as a zombie chant rather than a vampire's embrace. The bill is dead when the president vetoes it, but the Senate, with a 2/3 majority, can sink its teeth into the bill's neck, inject it with life, make it immortal.
That's a very vivid description, and I kind of had a feeling you'd say something like that.
Did I tell any lies, Mr. Boyle? An overridden veto cannot be killed by any president, even with a silver dagger.
That's not a dagger. That's a corn on the cob holder.
Well, it's still silver, and you don't know anything about what I can do with this.
Whatever. Thank you for being with us. So there's that. Other powers the president has. The president is our chief diplomat. The president in the Constitution is given the formal power of negotiating treaties for the Senate's assent, for the Senate to either confirm or shoot down. The president can also design these things that we call executive agreements. So an executive agreement is an agreement that the president comes up with another country. So the president says to Iraq, we're going to put troops in there for a while. Well, the president can do that. But the next president can undo it because it hasn't gone to the Senate where it becomes a formal treaty, where it becomes something with the force of law and very difficult to undo. Climate agreements. A number of our presidents have entered climate agreements with other countries. But then the next president can just undo them, as has happened. So does the president have the ability to enter into agreements with other countries? Absolutely. But do those agreements stick around forever? They do not. The commander-in-chief power in foreign policy, the president can deploy the military on his order, but only Congress can declare war. So the president can send troops, the president can tell the troops what to do, but the president can't declare a war. So this kind of leads us to something called the War Powers Act. After the Vietnam War, actually kind of near the end of the Vietnam War, but not after it was over, Congress passed something called the War Powers Act. And the War Powers Act said the president can deploy soldiers anywhere the president thinks is necessary, but the president must notify Congress within 48 hours. So the president can send troops into the Philippines or Afghanistan, but has to tell Congress within 48 hours that he or she did so. Then the president has to get one of two things from Congress within 60 days. Either a declaration of war or what we call an AUMF, authorized use of military force. Has to do one of these things within a 2-month window. Now, I think we've discussed in class, declarations of war are really uncommon anymore. Very few presidents are able to get Congress to declare a war. And the last declared war the United States was part of was World War II. And since then, we've had a Korean War, Vietnam War, Persian Gulf War, Iraq War, Afghan War, war against the Islamic State in Syria, and none of those have been declared wars. All of those soldiers have been sent on a authorized use of military force instead of a declaration of war. Presidents hate the War Powers Act. And we still don't know, it's never gone all the way to the Supreme Court, we still don't know if the War Powers Act is even constitutional. Does this get in the way of the president's abilities as commander-in-chief, or has the president been violating the Constitution over and over again, like many presidents violating the Constitution over and over again, by relying on an AUMF instead of a declaration of war? We've never really had that settled by the Supreme Court. Other informal powers the president has. Bargaining. The president can be what we call an honest broker between rival factions in Congress. Could be Democrats and Republicans, could be two parts of the Democratic Party, two parts of the Republican Party. The president typically has been seen as a person above politics who can bring people together. This is a traditional role of the President of the United States. Another thing the president can do is use the power of persuasion. Presidents are typically seen as somebody who can be a leader and persuade other people to see things the way he or she sees them. Another informal power the president has is through something called an executive order. These were not mentioned in the Constitution, but it's kind of implied that as the executive, the president can issue orders to people in his departments. Executive orders are issued to manage the government. They have the force of law. If the president issues an executive order saying that, I don't know, something like you are forced to have health care insurance in this country, unless the Supreme Court strikes that down, it has the force of law. You have to do it even though Congress never passed the law. But much like those executive agreements we talked about, the next president can just say, yeah, that no longer holds here. And the next president can get rid of that executive order. So laws kind of stand the test of time. Executive orders come and go with new presidents. Signing statements are another thing presidents can do. This is one of my favorite things. So imagine the president of the United States having the big ceremony in the Rose Garden. I'm signing this law. Signed. See, there's my signature on it. But I'm also going to write underneath there, I'm not going to do it. A signing statement is where the president can literally sign and say, I'm signing this bill into law. However, I think there are constitutional questions with it, so I'm not going to enforce it. This kind of goes contrary to the whole idea that the president shall faithfully execute the laws of the United States. But signing statements are kind of a big deal for presidents. Every president has issued signing statements. Some issue more than others. But signing statements are something that really in the past 20 years has become kind of a laughing point for political scientists, if you can laugh about things that kind of undermine the nature of democracy. So thanks for sticking with me today. Special thanks to Dr. Adams, as always, for being with us. And you guys have a great rest of your day. Take care.